Wait for it. Wait for it, and we're live. Hey, all you crazy sci-fi and fantasy fans. It's time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. Just a couple of nerdy veterans, a Stabby Chaos Coordinator, and one Chief Shenanigator, geeking out over our science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies. A place where magic is king, the sky is the limit, and space is the place. We are the podcast that puts the fun in dysfunction. So without further ado, we're going to let our guest, Mr. David Bock, with no R, because I messed that up in the pre-show. Mr. David Bock, can you introduce yourself to our listeners and viewers at home?
Hi, all the viewers and listeners at home. I am David Bock. I also write under my earlier stuff under Brenna Bock. Do a variety. I did a fantasy romance, urban fantasy, military sci-fi, general sci-fi, little bit of everything. I've been a ardent reader since I could first read, and not sure what else they want to know about me for that perspective.
So you are what we would call genre fluid. You're all over the place.
Yeah, I mean, I've tended to these days more urban fantasy focused, but I've got a few stories in the works that are sci-fi or military sci-fi, because that's long been a love of mine.
Absolutely. All right. So before we get too far afield, I will have to do the religion question. So are you ready for this, sir?
I am ready.
All right. Star Wars, Star Trek, or Firefly?
Yes.
There you go.
All of the above. Okay, we'll allow it.
Yeah, I mean, I saw original Star Trek when it was the only Star Trek. Not its first broadcast, but in its reruns in the 70s. I saw Star Wars in the theater when it first came out, and I was one of the 5 people who watched Firefly during its broadcast debut.
Nice. We have interviewed an author, and I don't want to say a name in case I'm wrong, but was at the Naval Academy. I think it was Colonel Brazzi, but I could be wrong. But he was at the Naval Academy. One of the authors we interviewed was at the Naval Academy when it came out, and they all went AWOL to sneak to watch the movie and then snuck back into the barracks when that came out. So I understand it was a cultural phenomenon from the start. So, okay. What is it about those 3 science fiction properties that you like so much?
I mean, I'll start from the last first. Firefly, it was so many gaming groups that I was in, because I knew these people, and it felt very real. And I've long been a fan of the classic Western, like the Clint Eastwood Man with No Name, or for modern-ish Silverado. So the Western in space really appealed to me. And the characters were 3-dimensional. A lot of times, especially in science fiction, you get cardboard cutouts, and they weren't. So that's Firefly. Star Trek might have been, if not my first, and one of my first exposures to visual media science fiction. And I really like that universe. Oh, and for anyone who's claiming Starfleet is not military, why would they have a court martial? Yeah.
There we go.
Pet peeve. But it was not always consistent, but it was a well thought out universe.
I think anything that starts on a television screen with you got writers' rooms, it's going to be very hard for them to be consistent.
Oh, yeah.
Unless they assign someone specifically, like we're going to build the canon as we go and we're going to stick to it. And they did not.
Yeah. Or they have a Bible before they start that.
Yeah.
Which most of them don't. And Star Wars was, I can still remember as a kid in the movie theater watching the crawl of the introduction exposition, and then the flashing lights of the laser blasts as the Star Destroyer captured the blockade runner, and it just went from there. But again, I also view Star Wars, in a lot of respects, as a Western. Farm kid has to live up to his destiny. That's the classic of so many Westerns of young kid out for vengeance or whatever.
So, given that you like the classic stuff, were you into Battlestar Galactica when it came out too?
Oh yeah. Not
Because it was great.
Battlestar 1980. We don't talk about that.
That never happened.
It's like Highlander. There's only one.
Yep.
Did you watch the reboots?
I did watch most of the reboot, and I liked it for the first few seasons, and then it seemed to kind of go off the rails.
Oh yeah.
Just tuned out after a while. It was also, even earlier portions, it was a little more soap opera-y than my current me like. I'm sure the original Battlestar had more soap opera aspects than I realized, but I was younger, so I didn't pay much attention.
Okay.
I had a plastic Colonial Viper as a kid.
Nice. We got actually a stuffed Colonial Viper for my daughter when she was born. We had a little stuffed Viper, and we had a little stuffed Star Trek Enterprise, and we had a little stuffed Millennium Falcon, so that we could represent all the things. If we'd been able to find a Serenity at that time, we would have done that too. But we have pictures of her when she's only, teeny tiny, and she's surrounded by all these stuffed spaceships.
Yeah. The Firefly, for just one more thing, was before we moved away from GPS as a separate device and just use mapping on our phones. Excuse me. I downloaded and installed the Serenity icon for the car on our GPS.
Nice. So they actually had a Viper-shaped bed that was for sale in the 80s that had the canopy that would come down so you'd be almost encapsulated. And so that some of those old commercials are coming back because they're oddities among what we see nowadays.
Yeah, I don't remember that, but by the 80s, I was probably aged out of that market.
Well,
sort of.
I looked it up because it could be AI these days, and I ran it through some of the AI detectors, and they say no, but that doesn't mean it's not potentially AI. But it looks cool, and I'm like, I'd have bought one if I had the money.
So many of those vintage things.
Yeah, I mean, I also wanted the G.I. Joe aircraft carrier, and my mother never bought it for me because she didn't love me enough.
Oh, you be careful how you talk about that. She might listen.
I mean, with all the episodes we have, she'd have to listen to all of them to get lucky on the one time.
Or I'd have to tell her.
Ooh.
That would be cheating, Jana. I thought we were friends.
Yeah, your mom likes me more than she likes you anyway, so.
All right. We're going to move on. Before
I'm not getting involved.
Yeah, that's probably be Switzerland.
No. JR is good, and she likes him very much. He mows her lawn.
All right. Because we're polytheistic here at the Blasters and Blades podcast, Game of Thrones, The Wheel of Time, The Chronicles of Narnia.
Books, Chronicles of Narnia. My wife read and watched Game of Thrones, and I would walk through occasionally, but especially once they killed the cute redhead, I lost interest. You agree?
That's not a concern. You got to have standards.
Yeah. Never got into the Wheel of Time for some reason. Nothing against it. It just never caught my attention.
So, what is the fantasy that you lean into when you think fantasy that's your guilty pleasure, or not so guilty?
Lord of the Rings.
Yeah,
I read it every year. I've read Lord of the Rings almost every year since 1977 or 8.
So there's actually an announcement that they have now. They have the Lord of the Rings universe. The Peter Jackson and company that made that are going to make they're in talks to make another trilogy set in one of the couple hundred years before the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and some of the history, just expanding that out.
So taking from the Silmarillion.
That's what it sounds like, but you never know. It's Hollywood in the current day, so they could mess it up.
I do trust Peter Jackson more than almost anyone else with that.
And that's why I'm cautiously optimistic that it gets greenlit, that it gets made, that it sticks to the. I want to say it was one of the kingdoms that starts with an A that fell.
Angmar?
Yes, that's what they were talking about on the interview about setting the conflict there, because there's rich storytelling and opportunity, and it won't like they don't have to. They can add to the lore without having to worry about well, actually, the people that are going to go nitpick, because it's the dark corner they can shine a light into.
Right. I mean, the folks who read the Silmarillion more than once will still come at them, but the more casual readers who just read The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, oh, I've heard of Angmar. That's the Númenóreans and all that.
But it wouldn't take much if it's because it's not as widely explored area, so it still wouldn't take much for them to be able to honor it and still have plenty of room to play.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we actually used to have Lord of the Rings on the list, but it was the default answer for everyone. It was like, okay, this is the part of the interview where they say Lord of the Rings, so we had to change it up, and that's why we put Chronicles of Narnia in there, because it's contemporary to Lord of the Rings.
And growing up, I read them both repeatedly.
Yeah. Have you read it as an adult in C.S. Lewis's Chronicles of Narnia and found that it held up for you? Sometimes they don't.
I think I reread them earlier this century.
It
bothers me that we're a quarter of the way through that already.
Oh, don't say that.
Don't lie to me. We might have to kick you off the show. All right. So one of the crying shames of adulthood is we stop asking each other the important questions. And thanks to the generosity of our sponsors, we are bringing that back. And I'm going to ask you, sir, what is your favorite dinosaur?
Parasaurolophus. Damn, I never pronounced that right.
That's okay. Now JR is going to try to figure out how to spell it.
I'm going to look that up myself.
I found it.
Ah, good. It's got a big horn crest that it would theorize that it used to make calls.
All right. There you go, dear listener. Parasaurolophus. And I probably butchered the pronunciation, but I got the spelling right. So winning.
Yes.
That's all you need sometimes.
Parasaurolophus.
Technically, Google did it for me, but my Google foo was on point, so I'm claiming the win.
Yep.
Something to be said for strong Google foo.
Yep. Absolutely. All right. So what is it about?
Writer, I rely on my Google skills sometimes.
Yeah. So what is it about that dinosaur that you really, really like? Anything in particular?
Well, one, it's unusual. Most people have never even heard of it, which was kind of fun. I believe so. A little bit of back history on me. I grew up in New York City within walking distance of the American Museum of Natural History.
Oh, nice.
And the dinosaur exhibits as a kid are second to none. I mean, the dinosaur exhibits are second to none, period, but as a kid especially. And I don't know if they actually had one in any of the displays, but they had a big chart of the different dinosaurs. And the Parasaurolophus, get me every time. It looks like a smaller T-Rex with slightly longer forelimbs and just this big bony, almost like Mohawk-style crest. And that was where they were talking about that it was hollow, and they thought, at the time anyway, that it was used for sending calls to communicate with other of their ilk. And I just thought that was really cool.
So they've actually had linguistic experts take some of the bones and create some of what we think the dinosaur calls might have sounded like. Yeah. And some of that is pretty... Some of it's comical, but some of it's pretty intimidating. If you listen to those sounds, I'm like, I'd be afraid.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And they used some of that when they were making the some of the dinosaur shows. The cool thing is that a lot of that stuff is available on YouTube. If you just type in realistic dinosaur noises, you can find a lot of that. If you want to hear it, it's kind of cool. So, all right, finally, we are civilized human beings here at the Blash and Blaze podcast. We are no longer knuckle dragging troglodytes. So, coffee or tea, and how do you take it?
I am a tea drinker. I don't get the flavor of mocha or coffee. My wife, on the other hand, is a serious coffee person. She has her weekday coffee, which is just the pre-ground, and then she has the whole bean she keeps in the freezer and grinds for the weekend mornings.
Ooh.
And for me, with tea, just a little bit of sugar to cut the bitterness.
Okay.
And I prefer a dark tea, like an Assam or some other black tea.
Okay. Jana's all about, when we talk tea, the herbal teas. That's her jam. She wants to drink a flower.
I do like drinking flowers. It's true.
Yeah.
Have you done the ones that were like the fruit flavored ones, like the berry teas and all
I like
those?
those. I like passion fruit. My very favorite mix is passion fruit and blueberry. And when Tabana used to be a thing, there were lots of things I liked, but I can't find it now. Go ahead, Dave.
I know people have talked about making.
Sorry.
I say people have talked about you could actually make dandelion tea, which is actually supposed to be pretty good. Just stuff you can grow yourself.
Yeah.
You've had it.
Excuse me. Technically, anything that's not made from the actual leaves of the tea plant are classified as, I believe, tisanes, not teas. And I've never been a fan of them, the floral flavors. Again, nothing against them. I know a number of people who really enjoy them. My wife has a few that she likes. But for me, a classic black or green tea with just a pinch of sugar, that's all it takes. And I think they're a good hot chocolate.
I think generically, at least in America, and I can't speak to the rest of the world, we say it's hot with steeped in water, and it's not coffee, it's tea.
If it's a plant steeped in water, it's tea.
Well, technically, no, because coffee's a bean. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So if it's leaves steeped in water, it's a tea.
Yeah, because that's the joke. Are you a bean water addict or a leaf water addict? Because among my friends and I. So, okay. So before we get too deep into your nerd pedigree, we like to honor our first responders and our veterans by asking a set of questions. And since you used to be in the fire department, I thought I would ask you. So, do you think your time as a firefighter affects the way you tell stories?
Yeah, with some of the stories, definitely it does. When you're in a fire department, police department, military, there are things that you see that you cannot unsee. And there are psychological scars that never quite heal. And then on the opposite side of that, there are things that you are just incredibly proud of that people outside those fields don't necessarily understand.
So as a firefighter, did you guys arm wrestle to decide what calendar month you were going to be assigned, or how does that work?
No, we didn't do a calendar.
You were cheated, sir.
I was a firefighter in a rural district as a volunteer. So let me put it this way. When I turned 40, they were annoyed at me because that shifted the demographic of the members to more than half were over 40. And no one would want to see that calendar.
Aw.
Well,
I'm sure your wife would disagree.
Yes, that was what I was going to say. I'm sure his wife would disagree. All right. So, do you ever draw from people you served with in the fire department when you write your stories?
Yes. There are a couple of folks in the department that were definitely larger than life characters.
Did it give you the supernatural ability to make amazing chili every time?
I had the ability to make good chili before I was a firefighter, but my wife's is better, so I stepped back.
No, you're supposed to lie to us and tell us the mystique of the firehouse makes all of your chili instantly better.
I mean, that is true.
Okay. So does your time in the fire department, like we talked about how it affects the way you create the stories and you draw on your friends and people you serve with, does it change the way you read content as a consumer of speculative fiction, do you think, or has that been largely the same for you?
It depends on the fiction. I worked in IT for many years. I worked in the firearms industry for many years. So if I read a story that involves any of the areas I'm familiar with, I'm going to be a little bit more critical.
More sassy pants about it.
I mean, I try not to be too snarky, but occasionally I'll sneak out. But if there's something in fiction, okay. Oh, what was that? There was a TV show with. I am very bad with names, so bear with me. And now I can't remember the name of the actors. The Irish comedian.
Oh, I know you're talking about the Chicago Fire.
Yes, Chicago Fire. We would occasionally watch an episode in the ready room, and it was 2 parts watching the show and about 10 parts criticizing the show. One of our favorite was there was one episode where they're standing out in front of a structure fully involved, and they say it's going to collapse, and they back up like 5 spaces. The building collapsed, and the rubble comes to just shy of their toes. It's not that precise.
Never.
No. A structure's debris field is 1.5 times the height of the structure-ish.
Well, so the only time it is that precise, which is what was the effect that they were getting because of that, is when it's a controlled demolition.
Even controlled demolition, stuff's going to bounce in unexpected ways.
Okay, that's fair. There are allowances even for that. You're right.
Yeah.
I just know in general that it's a lot more precise.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Controlled demolition, the building dropping straight down into its foundation because of how they set the charges.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
Pretty
in
cool
that
stuff.
case,
for me, it's always the magical cars. They will simultaneously, you can shoot them up like butter so you can shoot the guys inside, but also the doors will stop anything if you hide behind it. I'm like, no, pick a lane. Like you can say these are super strong doors, and some eras are going to be better than others, or you can say they're Swiss cheese, but you can't have it be both at the same time.
absolutely. Yeah, that's as a gun guy, ballistic performance is definitely one of my pet peeves. You know, someone's shot in the chest with a 9mm, they go flying back 20 feet. It's like, no.
Well, I mean, if it's known to be campy and that kind of thing, like I got no problem. Be as out there as you can. I'll laugh with you. But when you try to pretend that it's
Equilibrium,
any good?
it's not a good movie. It's fun. It's fun and stupid. And they have this whole thing in the mystique of it called the gun kata, or as we call it, gun fu.
Yep.
So
Gun
there's
Fu's amazing stuff.
there's actually been times that when actors got it so right that the military asked them. So when Keanu Reeves did some of his mag swaps, the military were like, no, how'd you do that? Because it's quicker than they thought should be possible. He just trained so much on his own. He developed his own technique. Then
I saw
Ranger.
some of the interviews with folks at Taran Tactical after the John Wick movies started coming out. And Keanu was so focused and so dedicated to the training that they were a little uneasy with how good he was.
there was another one from like the 80s or 90s about a bank robber that was Heat. Yeah, I've heard about that one too. Is another good one.
Yeah. The scene when the bank robbery goes bad and they're doing a fighting retreat through Los Angeles.
Yes.
That is studied in a number of war colleges.
The other good one, if you want to know about awesome tactics for military movies, people watch Hot Shots Part 2 in the body count. I mean, it's not accurate, but it's hilarious. It mocks all of the bad tropes.
Oh, yeah. Right up there is Hot Fuzz.
Yeah, or Super Troopers for the cop side of things. But anyway, all right. So I want to get started talking about your Auto Duels Chronicles. So we're going to pause for a moment, and we're going to shamelessly show for the man, and then we're going to dive right in.
Atlanta cabbie by day, amateur auto duelist by night. Ricky Turner is living the dream. That is, until he wakes up in a Gold Cross facility to discover his last match was more than a failure. It was a fatality. Indebted for the cost of the clone body and reboot, Ricky heads back to the arena to do the one thing he knows how to do: drive offensively. But at the rate amateur matches pay out, it'll take several lifetimes to pay his debt. Luckily, the AADA has announced a new nationwide road rally designed to challenge even the hardiest of auto-dueling teams. Dead Man's Run. Can Ricky and his clandestine crew traverse the wasteland from Atlanta to Sturgis, survive against packs of cannibals, roving biker gangs, and amateur auto-duelists out to make a name for themselves? Welcome to the world of the Car Warriors Auto-Duel Chronicles. Tales from the freeways of the future, where the right-of-way goes to the biggest guns and death sports rule the airwaves. From clandestine highway battles to primetime arena combat, jump behind the wheel, follow the fast-paced action, and never forget to drive offensively.
All right, thank you for sticking with us through that commercial interlude. So this story we're talking about, the Convoy of Chaos, is a collection of short stories. It's an anthology, but it's such a cool topic that we decided to have this on. I'm pulling up the cover as we speak. But what would you say? I'm assuming you've read enough of them for those. Oh, hold on. I've got to let Jana ask, because if I ask the religion question, people get mad at me.
Uh-oh.
Jana, you're supposed to ask the mom question, but I'll get letters.
I know. I hate it when you get letters. No, actually, it's really funny when you get letters. So everybody send letters to JR.
You're mean.
I got like 4 hours of sleep last night because the husband snored and talked all ding dang night, and I love him a lot. And I also thought about taking the pillow and just. So, it's fine. It's good. We've had a discussion about it. You know, all those kinds of things. But so I am just a little mean. I'm a little bit sleep deprived, ragey, but that's okay. It makes for a good podcast. But the mom question is, when we think about kind of content, target audience for your story, for the anthology in general, where are we putting this at? Is this something that I could hand to a eager 13-year-old, or should it be for the little bit older crowd? We're gonna go with the assumption that it's not middle grade.
Yeah, I would say, considering that there is some graphic violence in some of the stories, I would say junior high school and up, maybe a little bit younger. Kids seem to be maturing faster these days. Not necessarily a good thing.
So you might rate it R, and then parental discretion is warranted.
Yeah, I would say somewhere between PG-13 and R. There's another one in there, something 17.
Is NC-17?
Yeah.
I'm not sure what that rating. I know it exists. I'm not sure what it's for, though.
Yeah.
That is beyond R.
Okay.
Yeah. But mid to late teens, I don't know if I want to. Some of the stories are a little rough.
All right, but what about your story within that?
My story, I have avoided most of the graphic aspects of violence, but there is violence.
Okay.
That makes sense.
So how did you get into, because most of the, Car Wars is a TTRPG, it's a tabletop role-playing game, people, that Steve Jobs put out in the... Steve Jackson. There we go. Steve Jobs, totally different person. Steve Jackson put out in like the 80s and into the 90s. So most of the people reading
this day.
Well, it's still going, but that's when it originally came out.
I believe 81 was when Car Wars first came out. And I think I first played it Christmas of 81 or spring of 82.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's not exactly a TTRPG either. It kind of stands in this gap between the card role playing, the card games, and you had tokens, and you could bring in role playing if you wanted to, but you didn't have to. You certainly, you could certainly just stick with, because you had the little tokens of the cars, and then you had to line up which guns are on which sides and where are we facing and how are we going to destroy each other. So I really wouldn't call it a TTRPG. I think that in some of the later versions, they brought in aspects of that where you could totally go that direction. But originally, it really was this tabletop game where one of the best parts was getting your first one and taking apart all of the little parts and reassembling things. And we had a very, very good time punching out all of the pieces.
Yep. I would say it might better classify as a light wargaming, tabletop wargaming.
Yeah, it's got some of that to it.
Because in the earlier editions, it was you had a driver, maybe a gunner, and they had driver or gunner skills, and that was it. And it was all about the design of the car.
Okay. So did you, obviously you guys played it originally. Do you think this will appeal, the collection of stories that are coming out in this universe are going to appeal outside of those that are nostalgia about it? Does it stand alone today, or is it, more nostalgia bait for people that played the game when it first came out?
I'd say all of the above.
Okay.
As someone who is an OG Star Wars guy, reading some of the other authors' stories, it was bringing back memories of gaming with my friends and some of the shenanigans we got up to. Because we were D&D, original D&D, blue box, red box D&D players. So we expanded the character role-playing aspect well beyond what Star Wars initially designed to do. And there were shenanigans involved. So I think for anywhere from the older to the current Star Wars players, the books stories will definitely appeal. For folks who maybe never even heard of Star Wars, they're still good stories.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're still dealing with this really great background that they built up, and it is one of the brilliant things that Steve Jackson Games is good at. Is they build games that have a lot of world behind them that then you can turn into things, even if the world is really, really silly, like the Munchkin ones or something like this. So they had built things up that are really easy to turn into great stories, because it's the wargaming stories. It's kind of it's got a sprinkle of Mad Max in there because you're kind of dealing with the post-apocalyptic. But you have, a lot of these things are televised, and so you're playing on that idea of what it is that people are willing to watch and how far people are willing to go. But then they have this cloning technology, so fatalities don't always have to be fatalities. It depends on, do you have the money and do you have the connections to where you can get downloaded into another body? And so you start thinking about these things, and all of those things help to set up for an abundance of rich storytelling, because you have lots of different kinds of challenges, but yet you have different technologies and stuff that can rise to it. And then you have cars that have got guns everywhere. It's like the old Twisted Metal game for the PlayStation, where you've got that arena and the cars, and they're all lit up, and away you go.
Or so the old video game Spy Hunter.
Yep, Spy Hunter is another good example.
Yeah, because if you look at some of the original Star Wars documents and manuals, there's timelines which where things went sideways, but it also talks about in the very beginning some of the influences. Mad Max is definitely one. The old Steven Spielberg movie Duel was another. Demolition Derby is one of those. Hey, here's a demolition derby. What if we put machine guns in the cars? Just that what if, and Car Wars was born and lives on to this day.
Okay. So what about your specific story? Because I'm guessing Convoy of Chaos, the name sort of tells you what to expect from the collection. But what about your specific story? Let's talk about that. Could you give us, without spoilers, a little bit of the premise?
Well, my story, Cruise Control, involves a rising auto duelist, Daniel Cruz, who is on his way to an arena for an important match. And well, I'll tell the very beginning of the story because it won't be any spoilers. But he gets involved or in between an ambush on a convoy that he was passing, and things go out of control from there.
Oops.
Yeah. So as an auto duelist in his actual arena car, because the trailer broke down, so he had to drive the last part by himself, he goes into action against the ambush. And then a good chunk of the rest of the story is what was really going on and trying to figure out some of the mysteries around this.
So what was your character's name?
Daniel Cruz.
Okay. Cruise Control, Daniel Cruz. I'm digging it.
Yep, that was his catch line in the arena. Time for some cruise control.
Nice.
You got to appreciate alliteration. And it just means his mother loved him enough to give him a branded name.
I mean, his mother just married the right guy, I guess. Or Cruz.
No, we take the wins where we can get them. So do you plan on coming back to that story and telling more about Mr. Cruz, or was this a one and done for you?
None of my stories are one and done. There's always more that I wanted to tell, but there wasn't room.
Yeah, I haven't met a single short story I couldn't envision turning into a 12-book arc, so I feel your pain. Yeah. But then Jana beats me on the head and says, you don't make money on short stories, write the novel.
That's true. I mean, you do, but it's a lot harder than novels.
Yeah. So if you were going to tell your story of Mr. Cruz, would you do it in a collection of short content that you just string together in a braided novel, or do you think you would prefer to tell it in proper novel form?
That would probably depend on what part of his story I was telling, but I think for him, it might work better as a series of connected shorts.
Braided novels aren't as popular these days. Back when there was a whole lot of short story markets, people would write the same character and progress through events. And then when the rights would revert, they'd line them all up, and hence the braided novel. Because sometimes they wouldn't just post it as a collection; they'd weave it into a coherent story. But now that short stories aren't as popular, I just it's not a concept as many people do, but I do find it fascinating because it gives you like bite-sized chunks you can take, enjoy, and if you drop the book and lose it because it fell out of your car, you still got a good story, right, even if you didn't finish the novel.
Yeah. Which I thought was cool. Well, a couple of things about that. One is Raconteur Press is doing a lot of work to bring back the short story and the anthology. But the other aspect is with the braided novel is one of the styles that I like is you've got the individual stories that tell the whole thing, but then in between those chapter stories, they're the little interludes that tie it into the larger story or the big story arc that individual stories maybe didn't have.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yes, yeah, so there's art in there, and I'm not quite clear on how I would do that for Daniel, but I think I could.
But you've got more you want to tell about him.
Oh, always. Yeah, I've got some notes.
So would you trust him as your driver? Would you get in the co-seat with him, the co-pilot seat?
I would trust him. I wouldn't trust the other drivers on the road.
Yeah. That's a valid concern. So was this one a fun one for you to write? Like what kind of prep work? Did you go to a race studio or race car studio? Did you go to a racetrack and get in a car to test some of this stuff out driving wise?
I did not. I would have actually enjoyed that.
Me too. And you could write it off on your taxes.
Pardon?
And you could write it off on your taxes. It's research.
Yeah, well, I live in Tennessee, so no state income tax.
Okay, well,
I'm not sure how much that would affect my federal.
That's fair. That's fair. So where was this story set? Like, obviously this is a post-apocalyptic version of America, but where in America is your story set?
So one of the elements in Car Wars is that throughout the country there are auto duel arenas. And one of them, and I don't remember exactly, I remember what state it was in, but it was a Midvale Auto Duel Arena. And that was mentioned in a number of the source material. So that's where he was headed. And I forget which state, as I said, but it was in the Midwest.
Okay.
And I could see him going to different parts of the country. And he's a duelist. He goes where the duels are.
Have you figured out in your head his origin story? Because obviously this is, mid-career for him.
Right. I've figured out actually several possible origin stories. I'm not sure which one I like.
Okay. So obviously this is a short story, and so it's hard to ask a lot of questions without going to spoiler territory. So is there anything about the short story that you feel like you want to give people to sort of sell it to us, so that way we can go buy the collection, and I'll link the collection in the show notes for ourselves?
Well, like I said, the first main scene is action-packed, on the road auto duel ambush, which gives you a feel for Daniel's character. Just the way he reacts to suddenly coming under fire, and then his instincts kick in and all that. And then the rest of the story is a little bit more character development, because he finds himself in a, not political exactly, but a social arena that he doesn't have the training for. And so he has to learn that.
Okay.
So one of the things I like with characters is, okay, everyone knows about the Mary Sue type character. I find them boring. The character who's good at everything. I prefer to have a character who makes mistakes, doesn't know stuff, and finds himself out of their depth and has to figure out how to get out of that.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's more real life.
So you like the everyman character?
Yeah, I mean they're going to be more skilled in some ways. He's a fairly successful auto duelist. There aren't a lot of survivors at his level. They've either retired or died. So he is not necessarily every man, but it's like you've heard the stories about the professional athletes who suddenly find out that their accountant ran off with all their money.
Right.
They were very good at sports, but they didn't understand the financial side and trusted the wrong person.
Right.
Okay.
So they're not exactly every man, but their problems are understandable.
Well, I mean, if you're going to run off with someone's money, maybe don't do it to the guy trained to kill people. So that's my advice to you, dear listener.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
There is truth to that.
Or better yet, don't run off with anyone else's money.
Yeah, that's also a good moral lesson. I mean, I was more practical, but you were more moral. We'll take it both sides, either or. All right. So is there anything?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Just because the way I get a word in edgewise with JR is just to break in and poke him. So this is an interesting thing because Card Wars is it's a licensed world and all that kind of thing. And so I know that Three Ravens, who did the publishing on this, had permission from Steve Jackson's Games that had the whole licensing and all that kind of thing. So was it challenging to say, hey, I'm writing in somebody else's world? What kind of, besides being a fan of the game, were there other things that you studied in order to make sure that, hey, I'm getting the terminology right, I'm getting the rules right, I'm getting all those kinds of things? Because I know for readers, if they're really familiar with that can be a place where if you screw up, they're going to go, no, we know that you're wrong. So what did you have to do to make sure you were working well in somebody else's playground?
Well, once I got over fangirling at the fact that I was accepted to write a story for Steve Jackson, I actually still have most of my Card Wars stuff from back in the 80s.
Nice.
So I pulled that off the shelf and went through a bunch of issues of Auto Duel Quarterly. I looked through the Uncle Albert's catalogs. Just generally refresh myself with the universe. And one other element that I didn't know at the time, which would have made me way more self-conscious, was Steve Jackson is very protective of his IP, as he should be. He had to personally approve every story in the anthology.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, which means he read mine and he liked it.
Mm-hmm.
And when I found that out, my imposter syndrome flared up big time. But yeah, so to answer your question, mostly it was just reviewing the game materials that I own.
Okay.
And one of the fun things we did in the anthology is, most of the writers are in the same writer group, was we had references to elements of other stories in most of ours.
Oh, that's
sweet.
cool.
Yeah, so I mentioned a driver of one of the trucks in the convoy is named after the truck driver and someone else's. Somebody else mentions an auto duelist, Daniel Cruz, little things like that.
So you can read for the Easter eggs.
Yes. And also a lot of the character names are names of the other authors.
So the question then, piggybacking on what Jana said, do these stories, as per Steve Jackson is concerned, are these stories now canon?
I can't speak for him on that. We were told to stick to the game as much as possible. So there were a couple of story ideas that people had that, no, you can't do that. We don't have this technology in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if he considers them canon precisely, but they are held to the standards of the game.
Nice.
No. The reason I was asking is if it's canon, that means everything you're creating, those characters could potentially be played someday by others, right? So Daniel Cruz might be in somebody's campaign or whatever, which is just kind of crazy to think about when you're writing in a world.
Yeah,
now,
yes, I hadn't considered that, and now I'm much more self-conscious.
So one of the things that Three Ravens does is they do tend to make the audiobooks, they're just a little bit slower in comparison to the release of the print and ebook, because they just don't wait for them. So did they give you any indicate? So the series that this is part of, the Auto Duels Chronicles, the first 2 books in the series have their audiobooks out already. Any indication when this one will get an audiobook?
I don't know what the timeline is on that. It was mentioned that they're looking to do an audio version of it, but
Yep.
I'm not in on the backroom discussions.
Okay. I know Three Ravens generally likes to do the audiobook, so I just assumed that it's going to get one. I just wasn't sure if you had any, guesstimation on when yet.
I unfortunately no. I'm hoping soon, because then I can plug it to my friends.
Absolutely. All right. So as we bring this to a close, dear listener, this is the part where I remind you to please be kind and speak your mind on the reviewing platforms. Your reviews help the right readers find the right book. So do your part. It really does make a difference, people. And with that, where might we find you on the wild, wild interwebs, Dave?
Well, my books can be, books with my stories. I don't have any books of my own just yet. Can be found on Amazon under David Bock and Jana Bock. I'm also a regular contributor to the Blue Collar. Man, now I can't talk. Blue Collar Prepping blog, which can be found at bluecollarprepping@blogspot.com. I'm also a regular on the Assorted Calibers podcast and Handgun Radio podcast, which can be found wherever podcasts are found.
And we will link those in the show notes.
Yep, and I also tend to haunt the Assorted Calibers podcast and Handgun Radio's Facebook pages.
Nice.
Okay. And what are you working on now?
Several things.
Go on.
Well,
give us a peek into something.
Well, one of my earliest, I should say, stories is a urban fantasy that introduced the character of Charlotte McGinnis, half human, half fae, an investigator. And I've got that one in Supernatural Streets, and I also have another story with her in, I think it was Saints of Malta. And I'm working on actually 2 more stories in her timeline. One is set in the Smoky Mountains, and the other one is set in Wichita, Kansas.
Oh, nice.
She goes where the work is.
Country.
So I've got those going right now. Let's see, what else am I working on? This one kind of fell off the short list, but it's one that I want to get back to. Is there was an anthology that they were putting together about relics, found relics, and I had one. It's science fiction, and it's these politicians who have been sent out to various research facilities to judge whether they deserve continuing budget.
Okay.
And one of the guys on the committee at this research facility where they've been unearthing alien technologies touches something he shouldn't have.
Oh.
And the story is trying to save him.
Okay. As a young sergeant who led even younger privates, I can tell you when we went to new places, that was my greatest fear. They would touch something they weren't supposed to.
What branch?
I was in the Army. We actually, one of Saddam's palaces in Baghdad was co-opted by the coalition forces, and they set up a base there. But obviously, all of the valuable stuff is considered Iraqi national property, so it's cultural heirlooms and such. So obviously, they don't want the GIs running off with everything that's shiny, right? And so in his palace, he had chandeliers where each one of the little things hanging down were just diamonds. It was like rows of diamonds. Just one of those strings, you'd never work again. So they had MPs stationed periodically, and they're like, if you even reach over to touch it, we're going to shoot you. We're going to assume you're trying to steal, and we're going to stop you with lethal force if necessary. And one idiot, luckily he wasn't my idiot, he was someone else's idiot, thought, hey, let me test that theory. And he stuck his hand out and touched him, and they shot his hand.
Oh, yeah.
Not only did he go to jail for violating a direct order, he did it with a hole in his hand. And he doesn't even get a Purple Heart.
No.
So I was just remember thinking that, and I'm like, all I could think of was, I'm glad he wasn't mine.
Right. Oh, yeah. We had
I
a
feel
couple guys in the
your
fire
pain.
department who...
So, all right. So where can people find you on the wild interwebs? And we will link to all that in the show notes. Is there anywhere you hang out the most, like that one place?
Honestly, no. I probably, of those, it would be the Assorted Calendars podcast Facebook page.
Okay. And we've got enough gun nuts in here. They'll probably dig that stuff. So we will link that in the show notes. You give it a listen. We won't care if you cheat on us with other podcasts, dear listener. We'll cry in our beer and be okay. And Jana will just laugh at me, so she's okay either way.
That's also true.
You can find us on our Linktree, linktr.ee, Linktree/Blasters and Blades Podcast. Again, Linktree/Blasters and Blades Podcast, where we link to all the things: the BitChute, the Rumble, the YouTube, the TikToks, the Twitters. We've got our Spotify, our Discord. We have got our Substack, which is up and running now, so give that a go. We have a Blasters and Blades Facebook group and Facebook page. You can email us at blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. Again, blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. For professional purposes only, people. Save the shenanigans from Stabby Stab over there on the Instagram, the Twitter, and the email. You can support the show by going to buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Again, buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Be sure to put in the comment section that is for the podcast, and I promise I will keep my co-hosts duly caffeinated. They will drink that coffee brand coffee and tea or hot chocolate until they get high on their own supply. If you want some of that coffee brand coffee, the link is in the show notes. The discount code is Podcast Grunts. You get a little bit of a discount. We get a little bit of a kickback. Man, I mangled that one up. We're just going to pretend and we're going to roll on through it like it was an Auto Duel Chronicles race. And I'm going to say thank you for spending some of your precious time with us. For my crazy co-host, I am J.R. Handley, the sane one, and this was the Blasters and Blades Podcast. We'll be back next week at the same time, where we'll indulge our love of nerd culture, cheesy jokes, and authenticate. Boom. Thank you for coming on, David. This was fun.
My pleasure. It was a lot of fun for me too.
And if Jana stops writing so she can play the game, it's all your fault, and I will blame you.
No. I have too much work to do, but it is a good game.
All right. And with
It's
that,
a
we're
lot
going
of
to hit the end button. Wait for it.